There have been many underrated players throughout the history of the NBA. Some were number one options most of their career and got the label of a superstar. Even with that label, they've become forgotten or disrespected relative to the other players of their era. And some guys were potential number one options who just happened to be number two on some championship winning teams. Today, we'll be looking at some of the most underrated players in NBA history. Starting with Alex English. English played 15 years in the NBA and had a tremendous career. He was an 8-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, and won the scoring title in 1983. He started his career on Indiana and Milwaukee, where he played in limited minutes and didn't have much of an impact. He then went to the Denver Nuggets, and that's where his career took off. From 1981 to 1989, he averaged 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. He wasn't known for his three-point shooting, but was lights out from the mid-range and around the rim, shooting over 51% those seasons, and for the 8 of those 9 years, he was an All-Star but never finished top 5 in the MVP. To this day, I'm not sure how he never finished top 5 in MVP, shooting over 50%, averaging over 27 points for 5 straight years, all while leading his team to the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, that's where Alex English doesn't get a lot of respect. His teams never made the NBA Finals, but English was not a playoff dropper by any means. In fact, in the playoff runs where they won a series or two, English put up crazy scoring numbers on great efficiency. From 1984 to 1989, the Nuggets made a few conference finals appearances, and English put up his usual 27 points per game on 50% shooting. Despite his great play, he just ran into better teams like the Lakers, Suns, and Rockets. Honestly, I think you have to give him credit for always performing well against those good teams when he was no doubt the underdog. For example, in 1985, the Nuggets faced off against the Lakers in what was a no doubt one-sided series. But English averaged over 30 points, including a 40-point performance, in their lone win of the series. At the end of the day, Alex English was one of the best scorers of his era, and there's a lot of similarities to Carmelo Anthony in terms of how their prime went. English had 25,613 points in his career, and the Hall of Famer is no doubt an underrated player from the 1980s. Next up, we have Dominique Wilkins, whom I previously made a video for, pointing out just how underrated he really is. Wilkins played 15 years in the league, 12 of them with the Atlanta Hawks, which were no doubt all of his prime seasons. Career accolades for Wilkins include the following. He's a Hall of Famer, 9-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, and won the scoring title in 1986. In his early years, it was evident that Wilkins wasn't a great perimeter shooter, and he never developed a great jumper. To be honest, he never really had to, and the fact he was a limited shooter makes it more impressive he was able to put up the numbers he did. He had an incredible run from 1985 to 1994, where he averaged 28 points and 7 rebounds. All while being very productive, he led some very subpar teams to the playoffs, and occasionally took them on some unexpected runs. When talking about players who elevated their teammates, very few did it to the level of Wilkins. He didn't do it with the assist numbers, but by drawing a lot of attention and being an elite interior presence. He was also a great rebounder and really underrated as an offensive rebounder. It's also important to note that in the 80s and 90s, the spacing was very bad, but that didn't stop Wilkins from dominating the paint. He was the most powerful, high-flying player of his era, and they don't call him the human highlight film for nothing, and he did so with extreme force. A huge knock on Wilkins is the lack of winning and team success. I touched on this in a previous video I made for him, so I'll keep it pretty brief here. Simply, he just ran into better teams and better players, putting up some great performances versus Bird and the Celtics, along with the 76ers. No doubt, Wilkins remains underrated to this day. Now let's talk about Rajon Rondo, who in my opinion is the most underrated point guard in NBA history. I'm not sure if it's because of the social media or box score watchers, but for some reason, people downplay his entire career just because he was the 4th option on the Celtics in 2008. I get that was one season and it was the 2nd season overall, but even so, he made the entire team better and ran a great offense. That's how good the Celtics were. Rondo is one of 4 All-Stars on the roster, and you wouldn't think so looking at the box score, but his impact goes way beyond the numbers. He was a total pest on defense, usually taking the assignment of guarding the opposing team's best guard, and he did so at a high level. Offensively, he wasn't putting up crazy scoring numbers by any means, but did rack up assists at a high rate, leading the league 3 times in 2012, 2013, and 2016. In the playoffs, Rondo was a performance riser and delivered many clutch performances, including a 44-point, 10 assists, and 8 rebound game versus the Heat in the 2012 Conference Finals. In the 2017 playoffs, while Rondo was on the Bulls, they faced off against the 1-seed Boston Celtics, and when Rondo was healthy, the Bulls looked like the better team until he was injured and the Celtics ended up cakewalking to the next round. Some career accolades for Rondo include a 4-time All-Star, a 3-time assist champ, a 2-time champion, and a 4-time All-Defensive Team. Rondo played a very unique and different style of basketball, which no doubt led to him being overlooked. But during his best years, there were very few point guards in the league who could facilitate and defend at the level he did. Even on the Lakers in 2020, he was still very impactful, making everyone around him better. Next up, we have Rudy Gay. A fan favorite from the 2010s, Gay transformed his career early on. He went from an inefficient defensive liability to a great 3-and-D forward. I'm not sure if many people realize this, but Rudy Gay averaged 17 or more points for 10 straight seasons, including a few seasons averaging over 20 while shooting a good percentage from 3. He was very unlucky with the teams he was on, as he was on the Grizzlies post Pau Gasol and pre-grit and grind years. He then went to the Kings, and we all know about the mid-2010 Sacramento Kings, not good at all. So we only got to see Rudy Gay in the playoffs 3 times, which is unfortunate because in his first playoff run, he averaged 19 points. Not just that, he just played a fun and entertaining style of basketball. The most underrated thing about him is his longevity. Listen to the stat, which is just incredible. Only 7 players in NBA history have more total points, assists, rebounds, steals, and blocks, and threes made than Rudy Gay. At first glance, that might not seem crazy, but it speaks volumes to how all-around of a player he was. There have been nearly 5,000 players in NBA history, but only 7 had the totals of Rudy Gay in the major stat categories. With all that being said, it would have been great to see him on a great team and get an opportunity for a deep playoff run. Next up, let's talk about Scottie Pippen. The easiest selection on this list, and Pippen is arguably the most underrated player of all time. Why, you ask? The simple answer is that he lived in the shadow of Michael Jordan. The first thing people bring up with Michael Jordan is that he went 6-0 in the finals. Well, so did Scottie Pippen. Not only that, Pippen had more rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks in their 6 finals runs. He was a major part in why the Bulls were the best team of the 90s and why Jordan and Pippen are regarded as one of, if not the best duo ever. Pippen wasn't always a great player. In fact, it took around 3 to 4 years for him to find his lane offensively. Defensively, he was always elite and no doubt the best two-way forward of his era. He had some great individual playoff runs, especially in 1992 and 1993. He did just about everything for the Bulls, including leading them in assists and steals, posting back-to-back 30-point games on 60% shooting to close out the Miami Heat. After he left the Bulls, Pippen went to the Rockets for a year, and then the Trailblazers. His first year on the Blazers, they came a game short of going to the NBA Finals, and Pippen had an immediate impact on the team. But unfortunately, the Trailblazers lost to the Lakers in the playoffs 3 years in a row. So we never got to see Scottie Pippen go to the finals on a different team towards the end of his career, but some career accolades for Pippen include being a 7-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, 10-time All-Defensive Team, a Steals champ, and of course, being in the Hall of Fame. When talking about underrated players, Pippen is at the top of the list. I think both the younger generation and older generation underrate him in different ways, but he was in the shadow of Michael Jordan, and when you play with someone like that, it's natural for you to get overlooked. Next up, we have LaMarcus Aldridge, one of the best mid-range shooters in NBA history. Aldridge was the last of a dying breed when it comes to mid-range power forwards. In the years as a starter, LaMarcus averaged 20 points per game and had a true shooting percentage of 54%. He came into the league when guys like Dirk, KG, and Duncan were at the top of their powers. As those guys started to fade and their prime was ending, LaMarcus Aldridge became a top 3 power forward in basketball. He scored the most points in the 2010s out of all power forwards and finished his career 50th on the all-time scoring list with 20,558 points. He wasn't the best defender and lacked lateral quickness, which hindered him at times, but he wasn't a liability. His offensive scoring covered up some defensive problems he had, but an underrated part of his career was his time in San Antonio, specifically 2016 and 2017. When the Spurs were serious title contenders, he was the number 2 option behind Kawhi Leonard and averaged 18 points on teams that won over 60 games. In 2017, before Kawhi went down with an injury versus the Warriors, it really looked like the Spurs had a chance. LaMarcus was a big part of that. It's unfortunate he couldn't win a ring and ended his career without one. But I'm glad to have watched him play, and I think it's fair to say we don't have players like him in the league anymore. Like I said earlier, people may forget about him because he's someone without a ring, but he was such a weapon on offense, especially in the mid-range. Our 7th player is Bernard King, a superstar forward in the 1980s. King was one of the best scorers of his era, and to this day is underrated among players he played with and against. Much like Dominique Wilkins, King was on teams that weren't very good, and he elevated them the best he could. Known mostly for his time on the Knicks, where he averaged 26.5 points those 4 years, including a league-leading 32.9 points in 1984. After the Knicks, he went to the Bulls, where he continued to put the ball in the basket at a very high clip. In the playoffs, we only got to see King a very limited number of times, but in the playoff runs, he was no doubt a playoff riser, and his efficiency rose to over 60% true shooting percentage. He went absolutely nuclear in the 1984 playoffs, averaging over 34 points per game, shooting 57%. He did that while taking on the prime Larry Bird Boston Celtics, taking them to 7 games. The second leading scorer on the Knicks behind King was Bill Cartwright. Yes, Bill frickin' Cartwright at 15 points per game. Shout out Bernard King for doing his thing and almost pulling off one of the craziest upsets of all time. Unfortunately, that was the story of his career, having little to no success when it came to his teams. Nonetheless, he's a Hall of Famer, a 4-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, and a one-time scoring champ, all in just 11 full seasons. Next up, we have our last player, Pau Gasol, one of the most underrated centers in NBA history, averaging over 17 points for his first 10 seasons, including multiple All-Star selections. Gasol was a very efficient scorer that took what the defense gave him. Over time, he took more and more mid-range shots, developing a more all-around game. At the beginning of his career on the Grizzlies, the team didn't have much success, but it's safe to say Gasol took them to new heights when he got there. Before he arrived and after he left, the Grizzlies were near the bottom of the league. He ended up in LA playing for the Lakers, where he stepped into the spotlight, helping the Lakers get back to title contention alongside Kobe Bryant. And on the Lakers, he averaged an 18-point double-double for 3 straight years, while being an All-Star and third-team All-NBA. With a player like Gasol, you can have many different types of players around him, and the team will be successful. With the Lakers, Gasol played alongside Andrew Bynum and Lamar Odom, forming one of the best post trios in the last 25 years. During their 2 title runs, Gasol averaged 19 points and 11 rebounds, while adding 2 blocks on defense. He did that while shooting 55% from the field, and a very notable series for Gasol was the 2009 Conference Finals versus the Nuggets. With the trip to the finals on the line, Gasol was the perfect complement to Kobe Bryant, averaging 18 and 12 on 63% shooting, and later in his career he ended up on the Chicago Bulls and had a couple of good seasons there, being an All-Star selection both seasons and second-team All-NBA. It's crazy to think his production didn't drop until 2017 with the Spurs, so from 2001 to 2016, Pau Gasol was a consistent double-double per game player and a solid defender. People try to discredit the Lakers in 2009 and 2010, but Gasol was the leader of a great supporting cast. That alone is why I believe he's one of the most underrated players ever. His impact goes beyond the box score as much as anyone else on this list, and his basketball IQ and understanding of the game was very, very high. Much like his brother Mark, they weren't the most gifted athletically, but they played a certain style of ball at a very high level. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and with that, I'll see you on the next one.